If you haven't been here before, we're going to talk about, and I thought we would, about drama. It lives all around. People talk about that happened. Second, I'm getting a complaint. Hopefully this is back and clean and running. Please say here in the comments. There are all kinds of up around us in all kinds of different ways. People, when they say something that gets you, or they don't say something and that gets people. What is it? You know, we have that, oh, something just happened. But what is it? If you're new here, please say new in the chat. It's a nice night out tonight, so kinds of things, bring it. We've got, sorry? Internet connection. Hoping things are stable on your end. So, what makes drama happen? The ways we think about drama, characters in the drama. There's all kinds of characters, and it generates characters is the victim, sort of the receiver of the bad. Somebody else tells them they're bad. Does anybody remember Winnie the Pooh? Looking at his tail like, oh, poor me. Victim stances that people take. But, you know, just taking one of those, that's a person. A part of what makes drama happen is roles. A little bit about there's a victim. The victim, you know, gets hurt by something or thinks they might be. But then there's this other one called the persecutor. And the persecutor is often a role that shows up in this idea of drama. But drama is where things rotate. So for instance, what if you're in a meeting and somebody says to somebody else, oh, they're always creating this kind of problem. Well, that's kind of a persecutor role, right? It casts somebody as a victim, and the victim says, well, no, not me, you're the problem. It's when these roles start to rotate like that that the drama comes out. So, hey, Courtney, nice to see you. Thanks for being here. And I'm wondering, for folks who are here, have you experienced any drama this week? I don't know about your week, but in my week, usually it shows up somewhere or another. So when it does show up, are there ways around it? Are there ways to recognize it? If we can recognize it, can we do something about it? So one way to think about it, oh, hey, Maria, how are you? Great for you to be here. Hey, Julie, thanks for showing up. So we talked a little bit about this idea of a victim role. We talked a little bit about the persecutor role. Well, what happens is this rotation. And these are not the only two. We'll talk about another one. But let's say somebody, I say to somebody, oh, you're always messing up. Well, that's a persecutor kind of a statement. What's the first thing somebody's going to think? If they hear that, if you hear somebody saying that to you, the first thing you're going to think is, I'm not always messing up. No, they're the one causing this problem. And that's what starts the merry-go-round going. So there's actually another role. There's this third role, which is the rescuer. So let's say we've got a group of people in a meeting, and I'm sure we've all seen this. You got a group of people in a meeting, and they all sort of start picking on somebody about something, that one person. And then somebody in the room decides, oh, okay, that's not right. I'm going to rescue them. They may not think that in words, they may not say it out loud, but you can see it in the motion of the group. They'll all of a sudden go to that person and say, oh, okay, yeah, no, they're not bad. They're not bad. They're good because of this. And so now we have those three roles: the victim, the persecutor, the rescuer. And the funny thing is they all rotate and cause rotation. So what happens, and I'm actually curious if you put in the comments, what happens when somebody goes to rescue in that setting? You would think that would be a good thing. Oh, hey, John, how are you? And Sandy, wow. So what happens when somebody goes to rescue somebody in the middle of a drama? Have you ever seen when the person comes to rescue and they say, oh yeah, no, this person is great. They're not bad. They're doing good stuff. Sometimes the group will turn around and go after the rescuer. The merry-go-round keeps spinning. So, I'm kind of wondering for you, have you ever seen this kind of behavior in meetings or personal settings where, somebody says something to critique somebody else, and then there's a reaction, and then somebody else comes back in to rescue, and then it goes back and forth? Well, there is a way off of this. It's actually a kind of surprisingly easy way, is you refuse to take one of those 3 points on the triangle. So you don't take, hey, Sammy, how are you? So you don't take the persecutor, the rescuer, or the victim. You go ahead and you say, okay, well, how can we solve this problem? What kinds of things can we do to try to understand what's going on? Maybe go to curiosity. Maybe go to, how do we fix this? How do we understand where it came from? Can we ask a question to help people slow down? Can we sort of observe the group? And the funny thing is that if you can keep in mind that in any drama there are these three positions: the victim, the persecutor, the rescuer, that once you start seeing those things happen, that's the trick, is once you start seeing those things happen, then you have to resist the urge to jump into one of those three roles. Because the only thing that happens when you pick up that role is it's going to spin the merry-go-round faster. Which is kind of funny. So, how does this apply? Well, let's say we're sitting down and we're having a discussion. And somebody reacts in that discussion in a very defensive way. That is a sign that they felt somebody maybe putting them in a victim kind of a posture. These roles can be kind of projected, not just pushed. Hey, Mallory. Hey, great. Thanks for showing up. So we're, and by the way, just as a little bit of a reset for everybody, we're talking about drama, the different faces of drama. Does toddler behavior count as drama? That's an interesting question. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about whether toddler behavior counts as drama. Okay, how about, let's say you've got 2 or 3 toddlers, right? And something is broken in the house. What happens then? The 3 toddlers show up in the kitchen. One points a finger and says, Frankie did it. What happens next? Frankie says, I didn't do it. Paul did it. Well, so what happened there? That's actually a great example. Thanks for that one, right? So the Frankie did it, that's the persecutor, right? That person did something wrong. The natural reaction to persecutor is, oh, no. I'm gonna put somebody else in the victim. Okay, no, Paul did it. So now I've become persecutor and Paul becomes the victim. Paul says, heck no, I didn't do it. Now realize, okay, yeah, for toddlers, maybe they can't construct sentences that long, but they're doing the same thing. They are doing the same thing. Even if, even if it's as simple as a grunt, yeah, sure, that happens. And they're watching how we react to that. They're watching how we react to it every day. So if a toddler casts somebody else in one of the roles, what are your options for how you respond? I'm kind of curious whether you've seen this behavior in toddlers and whether you've found that there are better or worse ways to untangle that. One way to untangle it is to actually go back to, okay, instead of me picking a favorite, because the minute I pick a favorite, like let's say, the Frankie toddler, okay, no, I'm going to believe Frankie did it, so I'm going to support that person. Okay, great. But if I'm not going back to really understand the full story, to unpack, okay, what brought us to this point, then I could just be making it worse. So this idea of casting things, of projecting, been really strongly in drama. One of the funny things is this happens in business too. I know we've experienced it, we all have experienced this in business, where something happens in a conference room and all of a sudden everything's wound up. And one way to untangle that is to just go back and be the observer. It's really hard. It's really hard, but once you learn to practice it, once you practice this a little bit, it gets easy. If you learn to just say, okay, I see that things are spinning up. Can I just step back as if I'm standing in the corner of the room and maybe reflect back to the rest of the group what I'm seeing? And what I mean by that is you don't want to create more drama. You don't want to reflect back and say, oh, that person's acting like a jerk, right? Because you're acting like a jerk. That's a persecutor move, right? What if you could do something like say, hey, you know what? I am noticing in this group that for the past 10 minutes, there's been a discussion going back and forth about who's responsible for this. It seems like we're just looking for who to pin the tail on the donkey here, right? Can we maybe figure out where it came from? And what we're really doing is pulling the group back from that merry-go-round of the three roles and back into a problem-solving mode. Things about drama is it's a sign sometimes that we've gotten out of working on the task at hand. We've gotten out of problem solving and decided we'd rather be on the merry-go-round of getting excited and pointing fingers at stuff. Maria says, this is so important when your family first meets your significant other. They'll tell the significant other the funny stereotype, oh boy, about their person, and that immediately plants a seed in their mind. Right. Yeah. So drama. Another way to create drama is to cast a story. Anytime you hear people casting stories, it's maybe prep for that, especially about people, and they do. Maria, they love to do that. They love to do that, right? First time your family meets your significant other, what's the first thing that comes out? Stories about you as a kid, stories about some embarrassing thing that happened, stories about things that you may not want them to know about. And we have a couple choices. We could react. We can jump up and down and say, oh no, don't talk about that. But have you ever noticed how if you just step back and you say, okay, yeah, that's pretty funny. Sometimes it's disarming to talk to people, and I'm gonna flip from the family thing to a sort of business conference room meeting kind of setting. That if somebody's being dramatic, if they're casting that role, if they're trying to point the finger at people. Now, this doesn't work all the time. I mean, it's not always the appropriate thing I have to say, but can you imagine what might happen if instead of reacting to the drama, you said to the person who's bringing the drama, can you help me understand the intent behind that? Now, they'll probably stop stock still because they're not expecting it. It's effectively calling out, what the heck are you doing here, but maybe not doing it with a drama-inflicting way. It's saying, hey, I'm trying to understand. Where are we going with this? Where is this headed? Or to take that other position, remember we talked about this idea of being a bystander. What if you could bystand a bit and say, we seem to be in drama. Is this accomplishing anything? What are we trying to accomplish with this? Is this actually getting us to anywhere? And it's that kind of reflective, let's step back, let's think about it. That's the key. That if we can get there, all of a sudden the tenor of the meeting changes, the tenor of the discussion changes. Hey, Ellie, how are you? Good to see you. And can you imagine, in the middle of some really high drama thing, whatever it is, maybe it's one-to-one, we're talking, I mean, this is where I've been using business examples, and Maria mentioned, meeting the significant other's family and all. But imagine a one-to-one conversation, just a personal conversation between two people in a relationship, and it spins up. Can you imagine how different it would be, rather than trying to argue about something about who's right and wrong, to be able to say, are we actually accomplishing anything here? I've actually tried that many times. And, it helps. It really helps, because it helps everybody to unwind off the triangle and get back to actually having a discussion. And by the way, I didn't make up this triangle thing. This thing called the drama triangle by Karpman has been around for years and years and years. Came out of transactional analysis. I think it was back in the 70s. I should go back and look it up. But it was basically, the idea was to try to figure out some structural stuff about how people interact and what does that do to the interactions. I should probably mention, by the way, I didn't mention earlier, Joel.foner, the possibilities coach. And part of what I bring is this idea of being able to notice differently, because the minute you can notice differently, you can change the world. You can change yourself. You can change your interactions. It's not about a whole bunch of techniques. It's that if we notice what's going on, it's easy to do this kind of stuff. If we can't see all this structural stuff going on around us, then it just seems like magic that it appears. And what can you do? Hey, Maria, very interesting. She says, thank you. Yeah. And so I guess I'm kind of curious, from a drama, patterns in things you've seen in your own life. Can you recognize them as something that either has worked or hasn't worked for you? And I guess if you haven't tried a technique like this, I'm curious if you think this kind of a technique might work for you. And there are lots of ways to apply it. And oh, by the way, here's a little bit of a homework assignment. You don't have to do it, but just as an idea. Think about this idea of the drama triangle. Remember, it was the persecutor, the victim, and the rescuer. And watch either a daytime soap or a movie, or even stuff on the news. And think about that, and think about which parts of this are trying to create drama, which parts of this are creating drama. If you watch newscasts, for instance, and I'm thin ice, not going there. I'm just talking about the structural stuff, right? But any newscast, it's very interesting to listen to the words they say from this perspective, right? If you listen to the headline for a news article, or you look at it on the website or wherever you're seeing it, and somebody says, XYZ person did this outrageous thing. Guess what? That is playing persecutor, right? That's creating a persecutor stance about that person. Once you start recognizing these stances embedded in the phrases that people choose, embedded in media, embedded in other things, you can start to see what they're trying to trigger in terms of our reactions. And then you can much more easily filter it out. You look at that and you say, okay, so that word, that's all drama creation. What's the underlying stuff? And then you can decide what you think about it. And this is one of the ways of looking at, for instance, news sources and saying, which of them how do I think about the various ones? How do I identify which of these places that I get information are actually trying to create an emotional response versus just plain helping? And maybe that's part of this drama thing too. That one of the ways drama shows up is that it's an attempt by somebody to generate an emotional response. Usually not a really positive one. And so if somebody's trying to generate an emotional response, well, you could choose to respond emotionally. But if you respond emotionally, that's exactly what they were looking for. It's incredibly disarming, right, drama, to be able to back up and respond neutrally and just respond with the observation. That's why the backup and stand by kind of give me just sort of a what's going on here kind of reaction. That's so disarming that people, and by the way, it's disarming in a way that's not a power play, which is, I think, part of why people are good with it, is it's not a power play. It's just a way to say, hey, where are we? How are we doing? Julie says this is a great way to teach critical thinking. Yeah, I kind of feel like, quite frankly, that's part of what I'm trying to do. It's really part of what I'm trying to do. There's these 10 laws of logic that come out of old stuff. I may do a stream of that at some point, because I got to tell you, this is another one, is if you sort of listen to the things you see on the internet, you watch the things you watch and see and hear on the internet, and you filter it through those rules of, okay, how do you understand something that's an actual sound argument and which ones aren't? It's amazing how much of it falls to the floor. Ellie says, easy to see what's going on when observing other people, but when you're involved in the drama, it's harder. Yeah, it is. Ellie, I totally agree. However, I'm here to tell you, if you think about this drama triangle, again, it's the Hartman drama triangle. You can look it up on the web. And actually, what I should do is I should post some stuff in the description. I'll do that after this. If you just start learning to notice the positions on the drama triangle, in your family, in your interactions, in yourself, in stuff out in the world, this is actually it's a trick. Okay, it's my trick. The possibilities coach trick, right? Is stop trying to do. Stop trying to fix. Stop trying to be a different person. Stop trying to learn techniques. Just learn to notice differently. Once you've learned to notice differently for a little while, it gets incorporated back here, and then all of a sudden you don't have to try. It's just, it stands out at you like a bright light. And so, Ellie, to your point about the, when you're involved in the drama, when you get used to noticing this, it gets reflexive, and you sort of notice it. I notice it in myself. If I'm in a conversation and I think to myself, okay, persecutor. Okay, if I'm trying to destroy things, that's a great way to start. Okay, what's another way to handle this? And so after a little bit of and just learning to notice, it actually gets to be fairly straightforward. Maria says, the question is, why do the people or the news, for example, want the drama? Besides it sells. Well, okay, so you've named one of the big ones, right? If you look at anything having to do with media and the public and anything else, drama sells. But even past that, why do people want the drama? That's a really good question. And yeah, Maria, Bravo Pup, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name behind the title. A good question, because outrage is addicting. Why is outrage addicting? Well, there's a lot of different possible explanations for that. But a couple come to mind. Especially this year, last year. 2020, 2021, all the stuff about the pandemic, virus, things that happen when we think about the economy. There's been all kinds of stuff about what's going on in our society and even globally. That leaves people feeling, Sandy, yeah, the puppy training, I should have remembered. So that leaves us in many ways feeling powerless, or some sorts of powerless. So one thing that drama does, if you're in the persecutor role, one thing drama does is it creates a sense of power, right? I'm basically asserting power over somebody. Maybe that comes from that. Maybe it comes from people feeling uncomfortable about themselves. Often this does have to do with distributing power and responsibility, at least from the way I look at it. So for instance, why do people take up a victim syndrome? Not victim syndrome, but why do people take up a victim stance? Sometimes it's they feel like they can't fix anything, and they're just describing, I feel like I can't do anything. Okay, here's where we get to the 201 level. The 201 or the 301 level. Sometimes people take up a victim stance to project persecutor on another person. Right? So if I'm talking to you and I say, you are always doing that thing that clocks me on the head. Well, on the one hand, that's me being persecutor. Okay, that's a very clear one. But now let me flip it around. What if I say, I'm always getting hurt by this? That's a victim, right? But in order for me to be a victim, you have to be the persecutor. And so this stuff is really intertwined. That question you asked about why do people want it? It sometimes is about an interchange of power, an interchange of responsibility. Sometimes it's a way of displacing responsibility or authority from one person to another. Mallory says, drama creates a spotlight on others whom you would prefer the attention to be on, perhaps most desired by the insecure. Yeah, drama is a way to distract, right? If I can make enough noise, if I can make enough bluster, maybe it'll distract you from the thing that you're really thinking you want to look at. Maybe it has nothing to do, maybe the drama that I'm generating has nothing to do with you. Maybe the drama I'm generating is to distract me from the things in me that I don't want to think about. Roy says we have a habit of projecting our weaknesses onto others. Yeah, so there's all kinds of this stuff that floats around. And so it's not that we're going to fix all of those problems ourselves. But if we understand that that's all this mess of stuff is going on, maybe it's easier to not think to ourselves, you're doing this to me. Then it's not necessarily true that you're doing anything to me. You're doing something to you, you're doing something because of somebody else, you're trying to accomplish this or that or whatever. And people say don't take it personally, but I've always found don't take it personally is really hard. Because it's like, what do you mean they're attacking me? How can I not take it personally? That's ridiculous. But if you understand this stuff, if you notice this stuff about what's going on, then it's not a matter of swallowing the reaction. It's being able to actually look at the scene and say, oh, okay, so there's all this stuff swirling around. Some parts of it have to do with it maybe this time, other parts another time. But it really helps to then, in a more calm way, look at the situation and say, okay, here's all these pieces. What can I do to make this better? As opposed to assuming that it's all about things being dumped on me by somebody else. And so I guess that's my hope, is that out of learning about this, that you can start to notice a little bit differently, that you can get to the place where when drama erupts, you can be the one in the room that can actually help to make it stop. And there are people, it wasn't always true, but over the last few years, people have said to me over and over again, Joel, how is it you can be so calm in the middle of all this nonsense? And this is actually it. It's being able to look at it and notice the various pieces of what's happening and be able to think about, okay, how do I best work with what is going on here to make it better, instead of the assumption that I used to have, that many people have, which is that when something gets thrown at me, it's actually being thrown at me, when the source could be totally somewhere else. Maria says, I also feel drama comes from unfelt, i.e. undealt with, emotions that have pent up and burst, or it's the perfect excuse to start letting them out. Yeah. Drama, so the triggers, right? The triggers for taking one of these positions, the persecutor, the rescuer, the victim. There are lots of triggers for going there. Oh, here's another piece. Another piece that I want to bring for you is that if we're in a conversation, let's say we're in a conversation and things are going great, and then all of a sudden I say something and you react with one of these drama positions. Like I say something I think is totally normal and you react with victim, persecutor, rescuer. Whether it's one-on-one or in a group. You can be sure, I can be sure that I said something that sounded like one of those other points on the compass to you. And this is kind of hard to swallow, that when drama breaks out, it came from somewhere. And it may not have been intentional, but usually what it means is somebody involved in that interaction heard what they thought was one of those points on the triangle. It's the trick, right? That's the trick. What happened just before? the thing that happened just before that was the trigger, and maybe that's the thing we can learn something about. And again, as we've been talking about for the last little bit, just because I provided the trigger, the reaction may not have come from anything I actually said. It's the history, it's the story I have in my head about what was going on earlier. We talked about that the drama could spill out, as Maria said, could spill out from pent up stuff. So the trigger and the reaction may only marginally be connected to what's happening in the room. And that's another way of being able to say, if I know that's part of it, maybe I can back off a little bit. Maybe I don't have to react as much. Maybe I can be just plain in curiosity, right? Maybe my real job is to be in curiosity about it rather than in reaction. And yes, I'm going to scroll back a little bit here. Where was it about? Well, okay, it was about, I forget who it was, my apologies. Said, it's hard to react in the moment, hard not to react in the moment. Curiosity in many ways is the cure. It's, okay, I see all this stuff. There's all these possibilities. I wonder, what's really going on here? And engage the other person in trying to figure out what's really going on here. Because chances are they're not sure either. And we can help. So this has been a little interesting, hopefully interesting walk through this idea of drama, the drama triangle, how these pieces fit together. Again, I'm Joel Foner, Possibilities Coach. I'd appreciate it if you're interested in this kind of material to subscribe. I'll be adding more to the channel. I may be doing a bunch of live streaming. I kind of like doing this out in the trees. I'd be curious to hear what you think about that. I think it, to me, it just feels better for these kind of conversations in a lot of cases than being sitting in the studio and stuff. Because it's really about us and talking and real life and all. So again, thanks for being here. It's been great, and thanks for participating and commenting. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great night.